Good morning, Alina.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning. Nice to see you.
Such a long time since we met.
Yes, that's right.
We'll begin it shortly. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, right.
Okay. Dear friends, shall we begin? So, it's a warm good morning to all. It's a wonderful day for the Department of English and its Center for Research as we are preparing for the pre-synopsis presentation of Neetu P. Anthony, research scholar of Dr. Lata Marina. I'm indeed happy that she's been able to put it all together and be ready for her pre-synopsis presentation. On this occasion, I would like to welcome the external expert, Dr. Alina Manoharan of the Department of English, CMS College, a long-time friend and associate. And it is indeed a pleasure to have you with us, Dr. Alina.
Thank you, ma'am.
Let me also welcome Dr. Lata Marina, the source and the energy behind this presentation. The one who has been persistent in getting the results. And I'm sure it is actually today borne fruit. Welcome, dear ma'am, once again to the department and to this presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Jyoti.
It is indeed my pleasure to welcome all my colleagues who have logged on to this from different classrooms and the wonderful scholars and PG students who grace this occasion with their online presence. And I hope without waiting for long, let me just go into the topic of her synopsis presentation. Her thesis topic is Silence as Resistance in Modern Indian Plays, a study of subjugated psyche of women in urban spaces. And I'm sure it is going to be a thesis which marks the presence of women in the Indian scenario, how silence is a mode of resistance. And because silence is generally associated as a virtue of woman, which need not always be as simplistic as it seems. Silence has its merits. Silence has its advantages. And I'm sure Dr. Neetu P. Anthony, research scholar of the Center for Research in English, who's doing a research under Dr. Lata Marina, would throw a light on this issue in detail. And I welcome Dr. Neetu P. Anthony to present her pre-synopsis of the thesis topic, Silence as Resistance in Modern Indian Plays, a study of subjugated psyche of women in urban spaces. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you. Respected Dr. Biju Thomas, Principal and Research Center Head, Basilius College, Kottayam. Respected Dr. Leda Marina Varghese, my research supervisor. Respected Dr. Jodhimol P., Vice Principal and HOD of English Department, Baselius College. External expert Dr. Alina Manoharan, Assistant Professor and Research Guide, CMS College, Kottayam. Teachers, my fellow scholars, and all other present here for my presentation. My research title is Silence as Resistance in Modern Indian Plays, a study of subjugated psyche of women in urban spaces. Let me share my screen. Rationale of study. The rationale for taking up this topic stems from the realization that patriarchy remains to be the most significant structure of social inequality, perpetuating gender stratification in terms of unequal wealth, power, and privilege, transcending caste and creed in order to keep women subservient. The focus of my study is how patriarchy impinges on the psyches of women living in urban spaces in India. Literature provides a platform for women to express their resistance against patriarchal subjugation. Silence becomes one of the paradigms of resistance, which is sometimes more authoritative than speech. This thesis sought to explore how modern Indian playwrights like Girish Karnad, Manjula Padmanabhan, Vijay Tendulkar, and Mahesh Dattani use the myriad possibilities of silence as a powerful medium of resistance. Moreover, the paucity of academic research on silence as a tool of resistance in drama makes this study more significant and relevant. Hypothesis. This research work is based on the hypothesis that a uniform pattern of gender discrimination is visible in the textual depiction of women's experience in urban spaces, irrespective of their diverse geographical, cultural, social, and linguistic backgrounds in the selected plays. All of them foreground the interrelationship between gender, silence, resistance, urbanity, and space. Objectives of the study: to understand the theory and praxis of two distinct sociological concepts, silence and resistance, through the lenses of communication theory, feminist theory, subaltern resistance theory, and trauma theory. To study the four selected plays concentrating on the women characters and how they resist patriarchal constructions via manifestations of silence. To highlight issues such as alienation, indifference, injustice, subordination, and violence encountered by modern Indian women. To identify the interrelation between urbanity, space, gender, and silence. To explore the social commitment of playwrights like Girish Karnad, Manjula Padmanabhan, Vijay Tendulkar, and Mahesh Dattani as modern Indian playwrights. Research methodology. A textual study of four selected plays by Girish Karnad, Manjula Padmanabhan, Vijay Tendulkar, and Mahesh Dattani from the perspectives of communication theory, feminist theory, subaltern resistance theory, and trauma theory. Plays selected for the study: Boiled Beans on Toast by Girish Karnad, Lights Out by Manjula Padmanabhan, Silence the Courtesan Session by Vijay Tendulkar, and Bravely for the Queen by Mahesh Dattani. Research design. This thesis consists of 7 chapters, including an introduction and a conclusion. A preface is included at the beginning to provide an overview of the content and structure of the thesis. Chapter 1, Introduction. Chapter 1 attempts a brief exploration of drama as a genre and the evolution of modern Indian drama through its pre- and post-independent eras, and also recounts the transition of women's status as represented through drama. Drama is a dynamic cultural product that evolves in response to the numerous socio-cultural changes influences. Classical Indian drama took shape with the emergence of Bharata and playwrights like Hasa and Kalidasa. After the transition in the 17th century, Loknatya or folk theatre made drama more socially accessible. Modern Indian drama, which emerged during the 18th century, had wide colonial implications. Authentic Indian plays emerged with the establishment of the Bengali theatre, IPTA, and Jan Natya Manch. Indian English drama during the pre and post independence period was enriched by the dramatic contributions of Ravindranath Tagore, Sir Aurobindo, Harindranath Chattopadhyay, Asif Karimboy, Pratap Sharma, and Nissim Ezekiel, and so on. Contemporary Indian English drama flourished with the quality production of plays with powerful themes. Through their works, Badal Sarkar, Mohan Ragesh, Girish Karnad, Vijay Tendulkar, and Mahesh Dattani authentically depicted life in urban India. Along with them, the 20th century women writers like Manjula Padmanabhan, Usha Ganguly, Deena Mehta, and others revolutionized Indian drama with captivating plays that challenged established norms and addressed women's concerns. The four playwrights whose plays were chosen for the study share some common traits. They have women as the central focus and share city as the common setting. The four plays exemplify the thought process and common concern of the four playwrights for women in urban spaces who suffer in silence against male domination that stifle their growth as individuals. However, the playwrights creatively expose and explicates how these women characters employ their silence as a weapon against patriarchal hegemony. Chapter 2 it is entitled as Silence and Resistance, a Theoretical Turn. This chapter examines the important theories used in the analysis of the four selected plays. The study is primarily focused on the two decisive sociological ideas, silence and resistance, as seen through the lenses of communication theory, feminist theory, subaltern resistance theory, and trauma theory. To put it in a nutshell, silence is a dynamic concept with numerous meanings and underlying connotations. Silence is complete within itself, and sometimes it becomes an effective communication channel. Max Picard, in his The World of Silence, claims that silence is a more powerful form than speech. He says, speech came out of silence, out of fullness of silence. Silence becomes politicized when it is related to the concept of resistance, which means refusal. Refusing to speak out is also a form of resistance. Silence is an indirect concept of feminist theory. In a patriarchal society, women are expected to remain silent, which gives males the authority to handle the power of language. Women's silence is constantly misconstrued as subordination, but silence, on the other hand, enables women to contemplate and to mount up a sense of resistance. The resistance expressed through silence becomes an ideal form of subaltern resistance. The idea of subaltern silence has been experimented by Baudrillard, Georges Bataille, Michel Foucault, and Gayatri Spivak. When Bataille asserts that equalizing silence with violence reveals the hidden power of resistance to defy norms, Spivak believes subaltern silence is a sport of struggle. For the survivors of trauma, silence becomes a therapeutic medium to resist their painful memories and move on with life. Chapter 3 Women on Toast, Resisting Alienation in Boiled Beans on Toast. The play Boiled Beans on Toast is an innovative play written by Girish Karnad set in the background of Bangalore city. Critically explores Karnad's existential anguish and problems that can happen in an urban living space. Even if the women who live in such an atmosphere are highly talented, sometimes they have to experience a sense of alienation in their human relationships, especially in a male-dominated society. From a sociological standpoint, alienation denotes loneliness, which may lead to dissociation from human relationships and society. The patriarchal ideologies embedded in women's mind deprive them of communicating themselves, which itself becomes the cause of their alienated state, a state of self-alienation and social alienation. The key objective of this textual analysis is to investigate how urban women utilize their silenced voices as a powerful strategy of resistance to deal with the alienation they experience every day. While women characters like Angela and Dolly experience alienation as a result of unsuccessful marital relationships, Anasuya and Gandama, being aged women, have no voice within their own families. Sumitra, the wife of an ambitious Prabhagar, has to sacrifice her dream for the utopian dreams of her husband. Muthu and Vimala, being the subaltern lower class women who work for the affluent, are all alienated in their own ways within such a monstrosity. They are deliberately forced to keep silent and to suffer their predicament. But more than being a necessity for survival, silence becomes a way for them to resist their state of existence and to become empowered in their own way. Their silence is intentional and it is more authoritative than speech. Chapter 4, Putting Lights onto Indifference in Lights Out. Manjula Padmanabhan's Lights Out is a realistic play set in the heart of Mumbai city. The play is a dark comedy that exposes the sham moral standards of the urban world. The purpose of this chapter is to identify the theme of indifference depicted in the play. Although indifference is a necessity while living in a bustling metropolis, it becomes problematic when it gets involved in human relationships. Women's problems are often characterized as naive and handled with negligence. As a result, they are subjected to physical and psychological torture in a so-called civilized society. The women characters in the play, such as Leela and Naina, are victims of the callousness of their hypocritical husbands, while Frida, a servant from a lower social class, is othered and meant to remain voiceless throughout the play. The rape victim, who becomes the central subject of the play, is seen as an outcast since she is labeled as a prostitute, whose agonizing screams are drowned out by a heartless society. Their silence itself reflects the phallocentric attitudes of society. However, all these women characters gradually rise as resilient women who make use of the myriad possibilities of their silence to express their protest against the toxic attitudes of men in a male dominated society. Chapter 5, Silencing Gender Injustice, Stratagems of Women's Resistance in Silence, the Court is in Session. The play Silence, the Court is in Session is a tragic comedy written by Vijay Tendulkar, is set in the outskirts of Mumbai city. This chapter conducts a study of the play in order to explore the different modes of injustice experienced by women in modern society. Tendulkar is preoccupied with uncovering the injustice and double standards within the society, and he identified that gender discrimination and gender bias have a significant influence in stifling women's voices. The injustice against women are not wholly based on their sex, but on prejudiced thinking and opinions of patriarchal society. Tendulkar has created strong women characters who stand firm in their conviction to assert their own individuality and rights. The play features a set of characters including two women, Miss Leela Benari and Mrs. Kashigar. Miss Benari is a teacher and a theatre artist who believes in her own rights as an independent woman and is bold enough to question the patriarchal double standards that provide power and privileges to men. At the same time, Mrs. Kashigar, a humble housewife, is a victim of domestic abuse and expresses her resistance in her own unique way. The gender discrimination and bias that they had to face seem to have silenced their voices. However, in order to convey their indignation against the hypocritical attitudes of society, they employ their self-chosen silence as a potent weapon of resistance against male hypocrisy that questions their very existence as the wronged other. Chapter 6, Brave Queens, Strategies of Resisting Subordination and Domestic Violence in Bravely for the Queen. Mahesh Dattani's Bravely for the Queen is one of his best plays, which starkly criticizes the hypocrisy of society that dwells upon the subaltern status of women is set in the suburbs of Bangalore city. This chapter aims to scrutinize the theme of subordination and domestic violence as portrayed in the play. Domestic violence and subordination are two serious issues for women that have existed for a long time and is prevalent even today. The Tiny has effectively represented the hidden sorrow of different women who dwell in the urban microcosm. While Dolly Trivedi, Alka Trivedi, Lelida, and Ba take center stage, Diksha and the beggar woman are minor yet crucial characters. Dolly becomes a puppet in the hands of her husband Jitan, and Alka is forced to give up her dreams to protect the social status of her homosexual husband. Lilita, an unemployed middle class lady, endures the anguish of obediently complying with her husband's sole decisions and bears the traumatic memories of an abusive marital life. While Diksha becomes a living epitome of her father's domestic abuse, the beggar woman symbolizes the whole women's community who are crushed under masculine supremacy. However, they are not mere oppressed victims, they are valiant, brave queens who emerge from the ashes of loneliness and abuse. Even though they have been rendered silent, they utilize their silence as a weapon to combat subordination and violence. Chapter 7 Conclusion. This chapter sums up the findings of the research by discussing the key theoretical concepts of space and urbanity. Furthermore, it explores the relationship between gender and patriarchy in urban spaces. In the study of the theory of space, the city becomes a significant aspect. According to Virginia Woolf, the city becomes a gendered space that hampers women's ability to emulate. It has the ability to control and dominate. In a male dominated society, space is used as an expression of patriarchal power. This chapter, the chapter also provides a comparative analysis of women characters in all four plays who live in urban spaces under a single frame and summarizes the findings by foregrounding the crucial themes such as alienation, indifference, injustice, subordination, and violence that are highlighted by the four dramatists. Moreover, the four selected plays have examined the theme of the power of silence and its potentially subversive nature, along with how it challenges the dominant social understanding of silence. It also looks at how the women characters oppose patriarchal hegemony through their silence. Silence provides them with a room to contemplate, scheme, plan, and refuse. The silence of these women is a strategic, purposeful choice of communication. It is as evocative and liberating as speech in tearing down patriarchal structures of gendered violence and cultural norms that keep women subjugated and subservient. Thank you.
Okay, before we move on to listen to the comments expressed by the external evaluator, Dr. Adina, I have a few words to say. I'm Dr. Lata Marina, the research guide. I'm very happy that my research scholar had been successful in making her pre-PhD presentation. She is my full-time research scholar, and her work had been very consistent, and she had made good progress. And I'm sure her research will be a source of inspiration for many others, especially since this topic is very relevant in contemporary times too. The concept of silence has been very effectively being brought out through the four plays that she had chosen for her analysis. Silence, as we know, is as effective as speech, and it's a in the four plays, Neetu has tried to bring about how silence can be used as a subversive tool against subjugation. On the on the whole, I'm very much happy with her progress. So thank you, Neetu, for what you have done so far. And now um, um, let us hear what the external has to say, external evaluator has to say. Before that, let me thank the principal of the college, Dr. Biju Thomas, for the permission granted in conducting the presentation here in Vesali's College today, to MG University for granting permission to conduct this presentation, to the Dean of Language and Literatures in Mahatma Gandhi University, Dr. Krishnan, uh, Dr. Jyoti Mol, the Director of the Center and Vice Principal and HOD of Department of English of Vesali's College, all my former colleagues in this department. I was HOD of this department before becoming the principal of another college. So I thank all my former colleagues, former students, friends, those who have logged in, and my special thanks to Dr. Alina Manohar for accepting my invitation to be the external evaluator today. So let's move on to what the external evaluator has to say about today's presentation. Dr. Alina.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, Dr. Lata Marina, ma'am, Dr. Jyoti Mol, dear research scholars, and dear Neetu. So, Neetu, it was a joy to hear you presenting today. And I find that this is a very relevant topic. Can you hear me? Am I audible to you, Neetu?
Yes, ma'am.
I think she can hear.
Yes. So I find that this is a very relevant topic, contemporary issues, even when women are working, they do face a lot of issues, when it comes to the kind of society that we live in, especially, we still are designated as a very patriarchal society. Anyway, Neetu, thank you for that presentation. I have a few clarifications to make, and on the basis of that, in case you haven't incorporated those into your work, I would also like to make a few suggestions. All right. So my first doubt is this: like in your first chapter, chapter 1, introduction, you have spoken of drama as a genre. You have given a small introduction to drama as a genre. I was just wondering, in what other ways have you considered drama such that it supports the argument of your thesis? What are the other ways in which you have considered this genre, in ways that may support the argument? Neetu, I can't hear you. You've muted yourself. Yeah.
I think there are many research topic that research actually worked based on this fiction and poetry regarding this women issues, and I think this theme actually this women's concerns and all, it is not much discussed in as a research topic. It's not much all discussed in play. So I think to take drama and to study the theme of women issues, I think it's much relevant. So I actually chose this topic, ma'am.
Neetu, I think you didn't get my question. My question is about the technical aspects of the genre that may be relevant for your thesis.
Yes, ma'am. The technical aspects of drama. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. In all the plays, like this boiled beans on toast, lights out, the settings, like the light settings and the presentation of this light, sound, it actually changes according to the mode of the characters, and that is depicted in each of the play. Like, for example, in Lights Out, the light actually, the lights in the background lights actually change according to the mood of the characters, mood of the protagonist, I think. So all this aspect, in all the four plays, there are certain elements. The technical elements actually supports the mood of the women characters. I think, ma'am, all those actually. Am I clear, ma'am?
Yes, Neetu, I would just like to give you a few suggestions here.
Yes,
Now,
ma'am.
you have spoken of drama as a genre. You have spoken about the origin of Indian drama. You've spoken
Yes.
about the classical Indian drama, its origins. You've talked about Bharata, the Nati Shastra, and all that. But I also think, you must add such aspects as the various possibilities of the genre. In dealing with social concerns, because here right now I think we are dealing with a social concern. We're
Yes,
talking
ma'am.
about patriarchy. We're talking about women's issues here. So how does drama become a tool, as a tool of, that helps you to address these social issues, the potential of the genre to raise social concerns, especially, when dialogue is a very, very important characteristic of drama. I think you have to mention that in order to say, see, when you talk about drama, the whole idea is that there are a lot of dialogues, right? There is, there's a lot of acting happening on the stage, right? So in that instance, how does silence work? I think I think you will have to incorporate this idea in the introduction as well. Drama as a social concern, and especially talk about the idea that when how silence becomes a very important factor when dialogue is a very important characteristic of drama. Have I made myself clear, Neetu? Was that clear to you?
Yes, ma'am. It's clear, ma'am.
Right. So I think that would actually that sort of an introduction would, I think, would help to support the argument of your thesis further.
Yes,
Right.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I was also wondering at this usage that you had given, authentic Indian plays. How would you substantiate the use of this word, authentic Indian plays?
Because, ma'am, actually, the first place that emerged in Indian soil was with the colonial influence and all. So after the emergence of Bengali theatre, the establishment of Bengali theatre, only the place with real nationalistic spirit, or after the establishment of this Jan Natimesh and the staging of the play Aurat, the feministic spirit plays that depicts the problems of Indian women actually staged. So that is why I use the word authentic Indian plays.
Okay, Ritu, I think you will have to explicate that a bit in your introduction. When you use certain words like these, authentic and all that, there is always this question, what do you mean by authentic, right? So you might have to give a description, you might have to say a bit about that. Yeah? Okay. Then I was also wondering about this idea. You have used four theories here. You have spoken about communication theory. I think you're dealing with communication theory, feminist theory, trauma theory, and which was the other one?
Subaltern resistance theory.
Subaltern resistance theory. Yes. Where, in which part of your thesis have you explicated on that? Where have you actually talked about it? Is it in the introduction or
it's in the second chapter, ma'am. Second chapter, actually, I analyzed this two sociological concepts, silence and resistance, through the lenses of these four theories: communication theory, feminist theory, subaltern resistance theory, and trauma theory.
So are you trying to imply that that is the thread, the common denominator that comes, that actually binds all these theories together? Is that how
Yes,
you have used it?
yes, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I think that is also something that you must consider. You have to find
Okay.
that common denominator and explain about that. Instead of, I mean, because I haven't read your thesis, I do not know what exactly you have written. So I'm just giving you a few suggestions in case you haven't incorporated them. I'm just suggesting that you find this common denominator that link all these four theories together, and develop on that.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
that's the thing. Of course, I can understand you using these theories, but what is the ultimately the common thing that you are trying to say? The common denominator there, the thread,
Yes.
okay, that binds it all together, and then you can perhaps, I think that will give a more sort of strength to your work,
Yes, ma'am.
right? And I think you also have to give, there is a sentence here. It is impossible to regard it as nothingness, silence as nothingness. I think
Yes.
you have used something like that, right?
Yes.
Silence
Yes.
as nothingness. So, what do you mean by saying silence as nothingness? Has somebody said that silence is a no thing, right? So maybe you'll have to throw a little bit of light on that as well. Like silence is no thing, but you are saying that silence is something very substantial. It's a very powerful tool. It's a resistance. It's a resistance tool, right? So I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
we'll talk about that as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, and um, also about your conclusion. Your conclusion. I think here you are talking about the theoretical concepts of space and urbanity.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am. Yes.
Have you spoken, are you speaking about this in the beginning, like in the introduction? Are you mentioning this in the introduction?
Yes, ma'am. I have mentioned about some theoretical part of urbanity, but I'm actually dealing it in detail in the concluding part. Um, I think, ma'am, it's more relevant to say about all that because to elaborate on the relationship between this gender, urbanity, and space. For all that, I think it's more relevant to include it in the conclusion, ma'am.
I think just consider this idea of bringing that up in the introduction initially, because when you bring it out in the conclusion, it suddenly comes out as a new thing altogether,
Okay,
right?
ma'am.
Suddenly it comes out as a new thing altogether. So I think you must have to consider talking about it in the introduction as well, and then the continuation of it, as a concluding chapter or a concluding device in your last chapter.
Okay, ma'am.
I think that should be okay. And as far as the other chapters are concerned, um, have you spoken about how these women actually, how they actually use silence to rise out of their current situation? Or are they just keeping silent? Are
No,
they just
ma'am. No,
keeping
ma'am.
silent? Are they subdued? Or do they rise out of the situation? That I think that is also something that you must consider,
Okay, ma'am.
rising out of the situation by using this tool called, by using this silence. Have you considered that aspect?
Yes, ma'am. They're actually conveying their silence through different modes,
Okay.
through their actions, through their um, answered voice. Means, for example, in the play Lights Out, there is an aspect called screaming. So, when we consider the screaming, um it's a hysterical idea. When we analyze this, Freud's studies in hysteria, this screaming can be considered under as a hysterical aspect. So they're conveying conveying their silent their resistance through their bodily actions and all, and also through these ideas like screaming and all. So there are myriad possibilities for them to convey their silence, and silence as itself, they're conveying their resistance. So uh, I think,
I
ma'am.
understand, no, I understand the fact that they're conveying their silence, they're conveying their resistance.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
my question is, Does that have an impact on patriarchy?
Yes, ma'am. I think
Does the play bring out any such idea as how this silence becomes, has an impact, or it has, an impact on the patriarchal system? Uh, Rather than just talking about silence, they are using silence as a resistance. What is the impact of that silence?
yes,
Do the
ma'am.
women write about their positions? That's my question.
Ma'am, I think the silence, the resistance actually they're conveying through silence is actually a stepping stone to their empowerment, and they can slowly express their individuality and all. And when they're resisting in their own ways, it is a way of resisting against this patriarchal ideologies, ma'am. That's what I think, ma'am.
Yes, Neetu, I understood that. That resistance factor is coming. My question is about the impact that resistance has. So please consider this factor as well while you're writing each of your chapters, when you are actually explaining the drama, the plays, in from chapter, I think from chapter 3 to chapter 6. I think you're actually talking about the different plays there. Just consider the idea of how this silence has got an impact, right? So I think that
Yes.
would be a more conclusive, assistance to your argument.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Um, I think those are the suggestions that I have, and I guess Neetu can continue to work towards the submission of her thesis by incorporating these suggestions as may be relevant to your thesis.
Okay, ma'am.
Professor Lata Marina.
Thank you, Dr. Alina, for that very valuable suggestions that you have offered. They're very relevant, and I'm sure Neetu will incorporate those suggestions in her thesis. Thank you very much. Over to you, Neetu, to propose vote of thanks. Is there anyone who would like to ask any questions? Any of the participants who would like to for any suggestions? Is there anyone? Or shall we move on to the last part of this presentation? Okay, then Neetu, you may propose vote of thanks.
I express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Biju Thomas, head of the institution, Dr. Leda Marina Varghese, my research guide, for her positive outlook, patience, support, and confidence in my research, Dr. Jodhimol for her constant support, Dr. Alina Manoharan for her valuable suggestions and observations, Dr. Viju Kurian sir and Dr. Kavida ma'am for their technical support, my fellow researchers for their inspiration and support, and finally, to all of you for your presence throughout this presentation. Thank you all once again.
All the best, Neetu.
Thank you, ma'am.
All the best.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you everyone for your presence here. I think with this we can conclude this presentation. Thank you very much, all of you.